No, I'm not kidding. It's doing the thing again. Okay. The Office of the Chief Technology Officer is a central technology organization of the District of Columbia government. OCTO develops, implements, and maintains the district's technology infrastructure and major enterprise applications, establishes and oversees technology policies and standards for the district, provides technology services and support for district agencies, and develops technology solutions to improve services to businesses, residents, and visitors in all area of district government. OCTO's mission is to direct the strategy, deployment, and management of DC government technology with an unwavering commitment to IT excellence, efficiency, and value for government, residents, businesses, and visitors. The mayor's proposed FY26 operating budget for OCTO is $165,728,818, which represents a 57.1% increase in operating funds compared to the approved FY25 budget. This proposed budget includes 218 FTEs, a 1.1% increase in personnel. OCTO's proposed capital budget is seeing a 33% decrease to $15,941,638 with no change in FTEs. So today I hope to explore the increases in the budget, most notably in federal grant funds, SPR funds, and contracts. I want to make sure we dig into any operational changes to ensure we're maximizing upon local and federal dollars to keep our city secure and increase digital equity and education. And finally, I want to hear more about OCTO's plans for the capital projects funded in their budget. For the second half of our hearing, we'll consider the proposed budget for the Office of Risk Management. The mission of ORM is to reduce risk to the DC government through risk identification, insurance analysis, and support to the district's agencies. ORM is responsible for the facilitation of the Workers' Compensation Program, Risk Prevention and Safety Program, Risk Insurance, and Tort Liability. For FY 2026, ORM's proposed budget is $4,465,127, which reflects a decrease of 4.5%. I'm looking forward to discussing this today. In addition to being in person and on Zoom, this hearing is being live broadcast at briannecanedo.com/live. Witnesses testifying on behalf of an organization will have 5 minutes and all others will have 3. We're about to turn to our first panel and our only panel of witnesses, which is virtual. When I call your name, you'll receive an invitation to be promoted. Please accept it so you can control your camera and microphone. Our first panel includes Kylie Hogan, Systems Advocacy Director, DC SAFE, and Santiago Lakatos. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairperson Nadeau and members of the committee. As you mentioned, my name is Kylie Hogan, and I'm the Director of Systems Advocacy for DC SAFE. DC SAFE serves a critical role in the city's public safety infrastructure as the only 24/7 crisis intervention agency for domestic violence. And last year, we served over 12,000 clients through our crisis response line, supportive services, and crisis shelter. This is our first year testifying in relation to the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, but our work has indirectly intersected with OCTO for many years, as we partner closely with 14 different agencies, including MPD, DHS, DCHA, and CFSA, who utilize databases created or maintained by OCTO. These partnerships and our work with survivors has shown us the critical need for additional investment in database technology and information sharing infrastructure with an eye toward the end user's experience and ease of access to services. We often hear from survivors and partners that the district's databases are unwieldy and can inhibit the ability for the public to be served efficiently and effectively. District residents, survivors of domestic violence, and other victims of crime can experience this in ways that compromise their immediate safety and hinder their path to stability. DC faces additional levels of complexity because of our unique relationship with federal agencies such as CSOSA, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the DC Superior Court. For the last year and a half, DC Safe has worked closely with the MPD, OAG, the court, and the DC Volunteer Lawyer Project to review service of process and effective use of protection orders and other safety-related orders more broadly. One key point we identified were gaps in critical information available for first responders, such as whether an order was served, when orders may expire, and in access to the gun registry database. While databases that contain this information exist, the actual access and user interface that allow officers to access this information readily during a call for service is cumbersome. They must often access multiple databases, search at length for appropriate documents, sometimes only to find that forms are missing, or they cannot log in at all. If they don't have access, they must try to reach out to additional resources, all while being expected to maintain scene safety in often heated disputes. Technological options exist and are being used in other jurisdictions that could extract appropriate information in databases already maintained by the district and federal government and could greatly streamline this process of accessing information, enhancing safety for all. Similarly, our experience and the information shared by clients would indicate that the Department of Human Services database is struggling to accommodate the day-to-day needs of district residents. We frequently hear about challenges in enrolling new infants into service, situations where survivors are forced to provide the same paperwork and certification over and over again to the same agency, or in re-enrolling in regular benefits once they are no longer in need of DV waivers for TANF. All these challenges seem to be rooted in DHS's database and all delay services as survivors work through already challenging times. DC Safe recognizes this is a difficult budget year, but we strongly believe that the efficiency created by investing in additional, more user-friendly technology would more than pay for itself while also providing much needed relief for district residents. This request is not at all an indictment of OCTO itself, as we understand from our district partners that they are always courteous, helpful, knowledgeable, and timely in their support of district personnel. But we think there are real opportunities for improvement that pay big dividends in safety and services for district residents. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Lakatos.
Thank you. Good morning, Councilman Nadeau, members of the committee and staff, as well as our government witnesses. My name is Santiago Lactos. I'm here to testify on the budget of the Office of Risk Management and provide a recommendation on some additional cost savings the district would create in this budget. Specifically, I'm here to recommend a pilot program to install what are commonly known as speed limiters, speed governors, or intelligent speed assistance on fleet vehicles within the district government. For reference, if you're not aware, these are aftermarket devices that are added to fleet vehicles to prevent them from speeding, therefore also reduce the risk that they're in dangerous crashes and also slow down other vehicles around them, and by extension, reduce overall liability costs for the district. Before I give some context, I will be honest that I don't know if this recommendation would slot in better with ORM's work or DPW's, because DPW manages the fleet. But I figured it'd be better to start here, given ORM manages the liability aspect of the DC government's fleet. For context, in FY24, we have the most recent full fiscal year information. ORM paid out around $2.4 million in total claims. While not all of those were auto claims, and it wasn't the majority either, auto claims were the largest group of relative claims in terms of categorization. And the performance oversight responses that they provided noted that those claims remained steady, unlike some other claims that had actually dropped. For additional context, speed limiters are a great way to cut into those overall costs and save the district money while also amplifying safety on our streets. They more than pay for themselves. New York City implemented a pilot program on their vehicle fleet of only 50 vehicles, cost them around $80,000. It's not nothing, but it's also not a massive capital project, new fleet purchase, and stuff of the sort. But in that pilot, all those vehicles traveled within the speed limit parameters 99% of the time. And use of those speed limiters also accounted for a 36% reduction in hard braking events, which are often an indicator of unsafe driving and can lead to crashes. There would be, these kind of limiters, to be clear, would be focused on DPW's Vehicle Management Administration, not MPD or FEMS. And the speed limiters do come with an override button that allows drivers to go over the speed limit briefly if necessary in the cases that are needed. Recognize we're in a tough budget year. I think that something will actually pay for itself probably quite quickly, and then also over the long haul, also not just in terms of liability, but also maintenance. If you crash a vehicle, you have to replace it. I personally think it's proven enough in other jurisdictions to not pilot, but recognizing people like pilots, costs, that's what I'm recommending. I also know it's annoying have people show up at budget hearings and suggest new programs. But here I am, so please forgive me for that. Also, if I should be saying this instead at the DPW hearing, let me know and I'll be there too, but I figured I'd start here. Thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I'll start with Kylie Hogan for some questions. What barriers have you faced working with the district government, namely OCTO?
I don't think we've done any direct work with them. But in kind of the work we've been doing over the past few years, we've started to see areas where it seems like there are some real technological solutions for some of the barriers we see like MPD face, as I was talking about, or what we see from DHS. So that's really why we wanted to come here today and really think about where the solutions might come from, because we know that's not a single agency kind of problem-solving place.
And can you talk a bit more about what information officers are trying to access and what they aren't able to access?
Yeah, so obviously one of the key tools for domestic violence survivors are going to be orders of protection.
Mhm.
The order itself is certainly great, but there are going to be nuance in there in terms of whether or not that has been served, what are the expiration dates, what are the terms. And what we often hear from officers is that's not easy to see at all times. Same with their criminal stay away orders that'll be put in place if there's an open criminal case. Right now, I think if they can see them at all in kind of their own database, one of the glitches is because of the database, they're forced to put an expiration date in there. And there's no set expiration date for a criminal stay away order. It's there until that case is resolved. And instead it says 2099. And so officers are often really confused about what that means. And they're reaching out and trying to find other information, kind of all while trying to manage that scene. In order to dig into some of those details, like expiration dates, returns of service, they often have to jump between databases. And we just think that if it was streamlined, officers are going to have an easier time in enforcing, managing the scene, keeping everyone safe, right? The time to look up details like that is not necessarily when people are standing in front of you having a conflict. Any ways to streamline that process would be helpful.
Makes sense. Thank you. Are there any examples of jurisdictions that have nailed this that we should emulate?
Yeah, so I know we actually recently talked to a judge from Virginia. They're actually using the VineLink system to upload returns of service. So not only is that database really easy to read, but one of the nice things that it allows people to set notifications. So we like that for two reasons. One, you can look it up, it's really easy. But on the flip side of that, all of the petitioners, so whoever filled out that order, get a really quick notification that, hey, this has been served. They can look at that document. Whereas right now, if they want to find that out, they have to keep calling the court over and over again, or they call us over and over again. So that's one good example. There's also somewhere in the Midwest that is using Vine for that purpose. And it seems to have done well. We're going to have a meeting later this month to try to talk to someone from that process around what exactly that looks like in terms of cost and how it's added in. So we'd absolutely be happy to share what we find out.
Could you say the name of that system again? It was a little muffled.
Yeah, VineLink,
Fine.
VINELINK. It's been used historically and is currently being used in the district often to notify people when kind of a suspect in a crime has been arrested, what their status is in terms of being held or not, when they're released, if there are any changes to status. So I think it's something that kind of victims of domestic violence are already fairly familiar with, and now they're starting to add on these additional services. I believe there's some work being done in Maryland in terms of adding on order of protection information as well. Don't quote me on that, but that is kind of what I've heard.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Mr. Lakatos, we've discussed the speed limiters a bit with ORM, who said that there hadn't necessarily been enough research on the potential impact in DC. Could you talk more about the research on the impact in places that have implemented this for fleets?
Sure. So New York actually expanded from that pilot that I mentioned to, I believe it was around, I'm remembering correctly, several hundred vehicles. they're waiting on a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant to implement it more broadly on their fleet. But like I mentioned in their pilot results showed that habitual speeders, so like both individuals who they were studying who were more likely to speed, as well as vehicles that were more likely to be sped in for some reason or another. Some people just speed more likely in vehicles, were drastically reduced. So it went pre-intelligent speed assistance to post-intelligent speed assistance, where we're talking somewhere between like an 80 to 90% drop. I can share that study that they completed. I believe it was completed in the end of last year. But yeah, it's pretty drastic, and I think that's why I also suggested a pilot, because I think valid point from them. They don't have enough data in the district, but I'm not comparing apples to oranges. It's a similarly large government. Obviously, New York City is larger, but you have a large vehicle fleet to manage. Yeah, I don't know if that kind of answered your question.
Yeah, that's helpful. I'm going to ask ORM about this topic again, including claims that are paid out for accidents involving the district fleet. We've worked with them to improve enforcement of the district's How My Driving program, which is the complaint program for the fleet. And I'm happy with the progress they've made in enforcement of the program, but I'm always looking for more ways to improve traffic safety, as you know. So thank you very much for your testimony today. We're now going to turn to our first government witness, Stephen Miller, Director of the Office of the Chief Technology Officer. Okay, don't get too comfy because I'm going to have you stand up again. And have you all stand for 1 second and raise your right hands. Thank you. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. When you're ready, you may begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Nadeau and members of the Committee on Public Works and Operations and staff. I am Stephen Miller, the Chief Technology Officer for the Government of the District of Columbia and Director of the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, or OCTO. I'm joined today by Chief Operating Officer Tayseen Farouk and Agency Fiscal Officer Phil Pung. I am honored to testify today on behalf of Mayor Muriel Bowser's proposed Grow DC budget for OCTO in fiscal year 2026. I want to first thank our extraordinary OCTO family for all they do to keep DC government moving forward every day. We have some of the best professionals who bring their talents and passions to work every single day. Thank you all. In FY26, Mayor Bowser's proposed budget prioritizes a tech-enabled government to support the growth of Washington, D.C. and invests in modernization projects across the city. These investments include modernizing public safety camera infrastructure, enhancing the My Out of School Time DC or MOST DC portal, enabling cross-agency digital services, redesigning DC.gov, streamlining digital service delivery, and improving cybersecurity infrastructure. The proposed budget for OCTO includes $93 million in local funds, $27 million in special purpose funds, $46 million in federal funds, and $16 million in capital funds. With $22.5 million in new investments in local and capital funds, Mayor Bowser's FY26 Grow DC budget makes government service faster, fairer, and simpler. I'll now further describe some of these investments, starting with local funds. In local funds, Mayor Bowser proposes a $3.7 million enhancement that will modernize the city's public safety camera infrastructure, starting in fiscal year 26 with about 2,000 cloud-based surveillance cameras for DGS. The new maintenance agreement spans 5 years and the camera replacements over the next 2 to 3 years will cover DGS, DC Public Schools, and citywide locations. Led by OCTO and supported by agency partners, this effort aims to unify and upgrade fragmented camera systems to improve public safety, protect assets, enhance operational oversight, and create $2.1 million in cost savings. Next, there's $14 million in special purpose revenue funds, or SPR funds, from federal customers. This increase aligns our budget with revenue levels, with current revenue levels for new federal customers being onboarded. OCTO's revised fiscal year 25 SPR budget is $32.7 million, aligning closer to the fiscal year 26 request. Further, there's $44.2 million from the Federal Broadband Equity Access and Deployment, or BEAD, grant. Now, concerning BEAD, on April 22nd, 2025, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, or NTIA, the bureau at the Department of Commerce responsible for BEAD, granted a 90-day extension for eligible entities' BEAD's final proposal deadlines. A comprehensive review of the BEAD program prompted this extension with a policy notice aimed at improving the program. NTIA issued additional guidance on June 6th, which OCTO is currently reviewing. While covering deployment funds, it does not address non-deployment funds. Additionally, all eligible entities await new fabric maps from the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, and unfortunately, we cannot provide further updates on the BEAD program at this time. I would, however, like to take this opportunity to thank all of the organizations that participated in our competitive sub-grantee selection processes earlier this spring. We will continue to update these organizations on the changes proposed by the federal government and what it means for their applications. However, we encourage them to resubmit their application when we resume this process. An additional investment of $5.7 million has been allocated for the Services Demand and Delivery Platform project. OCTO is advancing the modernization of its IT service management platform. The successful deployment of the ServiceNow platform functions as the district's primary help desk solution. The transition enables OCTO to track service requests, define and enforce service level agreements, or SLAs, and follow up with customers for feedback. Furthermore, the platform has facilitated the creation of a comprehensive knowledge base, which empowers agencies with self-service capabilities. Additionally, in partnership with the Department of Human Resources, or DCHR, OCTO launched the HR Employee Center portal within the ServiceNow platform. This centralized portal allows district employees to submit HR inquiries and was extensively used to manage both FY24 and FY25 open enrollment requests. In this coming fiscal year, we will continue improvements on these projects, including a design and configuration of a hardware and software asset management platform, allowing OCTO to begin tracking assets from procurement to the end of life and creating a central repository where assets are assigned for inventorying purposes. This will allow us better insight into the usage of software and entitlements. We'll begin configuration of the configuration management database. This will come naturally as part of the software asset management build. OCTO will make sure that the discovery of software assets occurs, that the CMDB is fed data properly, and no future technical debt will occur from the lack of proper planning during this software asset management project. Overhauling of the employee self-service portal to bring it more in line with industry's best practices. We're going to begin leveraging features of the portal and make the user experience better and more intuitive than the current system. We'll be standing up virtual agentic AI to allow for deflections of simple requests that can be handled via a self-service portal. And we'll build out a demand management and project management portions of the strategic portfolio management module, streamlining OCTO's ability to intake, track, and manage project-level requests from agencies. Now I'll turn to some key modernization initiatives OCTO is leading that aim to enhance service delivery, increase transparency, and improve digital access for DC residents. First, the My Out of School Time DC, or MOST DC portal, has been launched. This unified platform, found at most.dc.gov, allows families to search for and register for after-school and summer programs offered by DC Public Schools, the Department of Parks and Recreation, and other agencies. This is built on the Microsoft Power Platform with Esri GIS mapping and real-time data integration. This portal facilitates citywide access to educational programs. Designed for scalability, the portal lays the groundwork for future cross-agency digital services. It is integrated with DCPS enrollment to automate student eligibility validation and includes service ticket functionality to capture and address user-reported issues for continuous improvement. Since launching the DCPS registration window on May 21st, the portal has seen strong adoption rates. We'll continue to enhance this portal in FY26 by building a universal intake process for agencies, onboarding additional agencies, and integrating charter school data enrollment processes, as well as scoping the level of effort for potential lottery processes to replace the current first-come, first-served waitlist. Secondly, OCTO partnered with the Department of Human Services to create a new case management system for the Sunbucks or Summer EBT program. This current system includes benefits management, approvals, call center support, escalations, verifications, and manual reviews. This is all fully integrated with DHS infrastructure. Next year, we are developing an online application, an eligibility checker, a parent portal to provide complete digital experience, enhancing access and services for eligible families. Third, in the coming fiscal year, OCTO will continue its investment in the DC.gov redesign, a comprehensive initiative aimed at modernizing the website to enhance user experiences, improve functionality, and to align with the city's digital branding strategy. With Mayor Bowser's additional investments in fiscal year 26, we will continue our government's digital transformation, including a $4.5 million investment to enhance existing portals, develop a resident-focused portal, launch the DC.gov website, and create an efficient, user-friendly experience that delivers timely information. Additionally, $2.1 million will be there to complete work on a cloud data exchange to allow agencies to ingest, share, and analyze government data faster, more easily, and more securely. In fiscal year 25, OCTO built a Microsoft Azure infrastructure for DC Fire and EMS, replacing an old system. In fiscal year 26, we plan to migrate integrations and APIs to the new data exchange to reduce costs and improve efficiencies. We'll also develop an API marketplace for PeopleSoft, eRisk, and QuickBase, and complete a self-service secure file transfer protocol solution. Concerning cybersecurity, Mayor Bowser's proposed budget emphasizes investments in cybersecurity as part of a broader focus on investing in government operations, and includes approximately $3.7 million to enhance cybersecurity. To support this investment, the Budget Support Act, proposed by Mayor Bowser, provides OCTO with the necessary authorities to execute the many projects and initiatives I've discussed so far. The BSA subtitle on cybersecurity and artificial intelligence refines and clarifies the scope of OCTO's authority, in particular regarding cybersecurity. This makes sure that information technology services provided across DC government and throughout the proposed budget are efficiently and centrally managed. Centralized enterprise IT is the most efficient, the most secure approach to management of large, complex IT environments like the districts. And this BSA language is aiming to put OCTO on the best footing to provide that service district-wide. Further, defining information technology to include artificial intelligence shouldn't be thought of as expanding the definition of IT. What we think of as AI today rests comfortably within the scope of IT. It's technology, software, data, and hardware for automating the processing of information. I'd like to end my testimony by discussing artificial intelligence. Using existing funding, Mayor Bowser's February 2024 order articulating DC's artificial intelligence values and establishing artificial intelligence strategic benchmarks made OCTO responsible for reviewing all agency proposed uses of AI tools for privacy and cybersecurity reasons. OCTO has been successful in providing this service to sister agencies without new funding in fiscal year 25 and will continue to provide it in fiscal year 26. Further, the tech enablement team serves as a front door for agency chief information officers at OCTO. In fiscal year 25 alone, they provided numerous trainings and workshops for agency staff and CIOs on AI, including in February of 2025, hosting 2 events to mark the 1-year anniversary of the mayor's order, an in-person workshop for chief information officers, and 2 virtual AI information sessions for DC government staff. The 2 information sessions were extremely popular and well attended by over 1,000 participants from over 50 agencies. In April of 2025, OCTO hosted 4 workshops to support agencies in their strategic planning efforts. In total, 54 individuals participated from 34 different agencies. You can expect the same kind of work on AI in the next fiscal year. In conclusion, I want to thank you for the opportunity to highlight many key investments in Mayor Bowser's proposed Grow DC budget for OCTO. With these investments, we will continue to unleash the possible and propel district residents and businesses safely into the future with technology. Chairperson, at this time, I am happy to answer any questions and expand upon my testimony today.
Thank you very much for your testimony. First, some questions from the Council Office on Race Equity. In your proposed FY26 budget, are there any specific programs or allocations designed to bridge the digital divide for district residents?
So our state broadband office at OCTO is responsible for executing the district's 5-year plan, 5-year action plan. The plan, together with investments from the Federal Broadband Equity Access and Deployment, or BEAD program, I'll try to use BEAD from this point, provides numerous programs that help bridge the digital divide in the district. In addition to we have a longstanding practice in the office with what we call Tech 101 workshops. So we continue those workshops weekly across the district. And in the current fiscal year in 25, we have had over 60 trainings now at this point and outreach events with nearly 500 residents involved in these programs. You can learn more about this and our use of BEAD funds at techtogetherdc.com. There's more information there about all those programs.
Very good. In your proposed FY26 budget, which reductions may burden certain communities more than others?
We don't anticipate any issues with that in our current budget. In our proposed budget, sorry, not current.
How much of your agency's data is collected or disaggregated by race?
As an internal services agency, that is not something that we would collect ourselves. Yeah.
All right. And as part of the next budget season, how could community members be engaged or consulted to identify programming and service needs for your department?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, we have a robust 5-year action plan. This includes a lot of work that we do around community outreach and engagement. In addition, our Office of Communications is also a community outreach office, and we have an innovation team at OCTO as well. Just as an example, in late May, that innovation team itself, they sat at various metro stations around DC, at public libraries and at the American Job Center to talk to residents and solicit feedback on some of the initiatives that we're working on, things like dc.gov or things like the MOST portal or work that we're doing with the careers portal. And in March, I, myself, and our state broadband office administrator, we attended Southwest Neighborhood Assembly to talk about the work that we're doing in that community as well and to solicit feedback on anything that we can do to help them. We try to remain open. We try to remain available for constant feedback, whether it be through our website, whether it be through social media, email, phone calls, ask the director on our website. Again, there's a lot of outlets that we have available for collecting that feedback in addition to being out in community engagement forums myself. We also hosted 2 public events on artificial intelligence in the past year, where we talked about everything from how we move forward on some AI pilots. We also talked about a focus on AI with the Deputy Mayor for Education in those sessions. And then I think one of the best things that I do every year is I join Mayor Bowser as she hosts her budget engagement forums and, listen to residents directly on not just how OCTO is impacted, and not just how they feel OCTO should be budgeted, but also how the district as a whole can be, helpful in the proposed budget process. And then I get to think through how OCTO can be a part of that as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Your operating budget includes a $60 million increase with $44 million coming from federal grant funds, and congratulations on securing that support. Is the entire $44 million tied to BEAD, or are other federal sources included as well?
So I just kind of to note, yes, but are, currently in this fiscal year, the revised amount for the federal funds is 12.2 million. But yeah, in fiscal year 26, the entire 45 million is for that BEAD program, and that's where we'd see that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Can you talk more about that funding and how we're going to use it?
Sure. So I think it's important to put across that, this is a federal program. A lot of this is tied to federal programs and federal timelines. So on April 22nd of this year, NTIA granted a 90-day extension for eligible entities' final proposal. That deadline is now, I believe, somewhere along August 7th.
Okay.
And we're currently going through a comprehensive review of that program, prompted by this extension, prompted by the policy changes that the federal government are making on their side to improve the program. NTIA issued guidance to us last week on June 6th, so 6 days ago. We are currently reviewing this. It's a bit of a process we have to go through with people that there's legal reviews and of course my reviews are involved in this as well. So while, we're ready and covering deployment funds, we currently don't have answers that address non-deployment funds, and that's kind of what we're waiting on. Additionally, all eligible entities involved are waiting on new, what the FCC calls fabric maps. So we will need these new maps in order to help continue with our plans. So at this time, it's kind of hard to provide specific updates on BEAD.
What kind of maps?
Fabric maps, so they kind of, we'll get back to you on what that means. It's pretty complex, but it gets into servicing, it gets into a few different things. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe AI can help me figure it out.
Potentially, yes. No promises on that though.
How have you worked with the public on BEAD, and how do you plan to continue receiving feedback from community partners?
Yeah, sure. So again, we go out to the community, whether it's myself or the state broadband office, the administrator of that office, or representatives from our executive suite, like our deputy CTO. We work to engage to get their information. We also have a website that is dedicated to this program that involves mandatory public comment periods. So we do just that as dictated by NTIA and the FCC. We try to facilitate as much community engagement as possible. And we work through, we will discuss plans and proposals once those are ready for discussion. Again, this is all going to be tied to a new deadline around August 7th.
Can you talk a bit more about how your agency uses local and federal funds to increase digital equity?
Yeah, so a key component in this was developing that 5-year action plan that we've been taking action on. Yeah, so that established our goals and priorities and serves as a comprehensive way for us to assess if the information in our proposals are correct.
Has OCTO replaced any local funds with federal resources in FY25?
No, it's very specific in the rules of that program that we have a mandate to supplement but not replace funds, not replace local funding.
And how do you ensure the maximization of federal grant funds so we aren't returning unspent money?
So we collaborate with our federal partners to understand program requirements, and we would do everything we can. We have contingencies built into our plans to maximize those funds. But again, given the current changes, it's hard to get specific comments on what we're going to do.
Your budget shows a $62 million increase in the DC Net division. About 14 million of this is for contracts and IT hardware maintenance. Can you explain what exactly that means and how it accounts for, and what accounts for the increase?
Council member, the increase is three-pronged. If you see the first one, more than 71%, 44 million alone is coming from the BEAD plan itself.
Right.
The second portion is a $4.3 million investment that the director already mentioned is invested for our multi-phase modernization of the public safety camera infrastructure. And the third one is the 14 million increase that's coming from our SPR funds. And this is to align with our budgets to support new federal customers that we are onboarding. And if you note, even in current fiscal year, the budget has been increased to $32 million, more in line with our request in 26.
Can you say more about the federal customers?
So currently, we've onboarded new federal customers that pay through the they pay for the internet services that our DC Net service is providing to them. So that's just increasing that footprint.
Okay, so basically they're paying to use our network. Okay. And what are the costs of operating that program for those clients?
So it's mostly the service delivery. So anything that's related with the contractual services for providing those internet services.
Like what?
Pass-through vendor costs for telco, professional services. What else is
Do we
there?
provide basically like tech support for the people that use the
For tech
network?
support, yes.
Yeah. So like if the network goes down, they're our customers, we have to.
Yeah, that's correct. So they would utilize, we have a network operations center that runs 24/7 that they would utilize, and we have service level agreements that are codified through MOUs with those federal agencies.
How long have we had them as clients?
Yeah, several years. It goes back further than I've worked with DC Net, but it's one of the primary, they are one of the primary external customers of DC Net outside of the community access agreements.
The revenue in the SPR is essentially enough to cover the services?
That's correct. It's not, we're not a for-profit enterprise, so yeah, just to get into that.
Fair enough. All right, so the 4.3 million you said, I think, for the public safety cameras. Can you talk more about what is actually happening with that?
For 4.3.
The camera expense.
Okay. So we are working with agency partners like DGS, working with agency partners like DCPS. As I mentioned in my testimony, we're looking to modernize the public safety camera infrastructure across the city. Over the course of this project, we believe that there'll be approximately 6,000 cameras that we'll be able to put in place across government facilities and with partners. The rollout itself is going to focus, this initial rollout is going to focus on DGS customers. So that's about 2,000 cameras that we're looking at that'll cover modernizing existing, but also covering known blind spots across the city. And, we'll work with additional agency partners to unify this from a fragmented system into one that is available to our public safety partners like HCMA and MPD. We'll also make sure that this is increasing our capability to protect our assets, to monitor our assets, whether they be buildings or whether it be equipment in a room. And this will also enhance our, additional to that, like those operational bonuses that we get with this. This is also really saving about $2.1 million against the current camera systems that are in place today. This is going to cover, as we work with those partners, we're looking at about 8 high schools. I think we're looking at, not I think, I know. We're looking at about 8 high schools. We're also looking at facilities like parks and recreation in addition to those schools. And we'll focus based upon high crime areas as we work with MPD as a partner for those locations. These are 2,000 smart cameras that we're looking in this first tranche They are unified, they're cloud-based. They can have additional services attached to them down the line where they can help identify what objects they see through the camera itself. They also help us improve our incident response capabilities, and they are much easier to integrate into systems at our public safety partners as well.
So when you say DGS clients, does that include DCPS, or is there sort of a separate thing going on for DCPS?
It's not separate, but they would be a higher priority, especially in schools that are associated with higher crime.
Okay, so then DGS clients means generally DC-owned property?
Yes, DC owned, DC leased as well. Yes.
Got it. So property we don't own, but that we have a lease, we're leasing space there for a government entity?
Yeah.
Okay. Does it include anything I am not asking about?
I think in general, this is something that's super scalable, super easy to integrate. This is something that MPD and HC, like for example, with MPD's Real-Time Crime Center, they'll benefit from this. They'll be able to get information from these cameras. It'll be easier for us to onboard them. Same thing with HCMA's Fusion Center. And then, within individual agencies or within DGS, they'll have an improved interface, better capabilities to get through the camera feeds, whether it be recorded or live events.
Okay, so the initial rollout is 2,000 cameras, and that will be in in FY26?
Correct.
What about the remaining 4,000 cameras? When will those be?
So it's approximately 6,000 cameras total. We'll work on those priorities with DGS, DCPS, and the public safety partners.
You're going to install them all in FY26?
No. Through 28. It is a multi-year plan.
How many per year do you think?
Potentially 2,000 a year. It just depends on the complexity of the installs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And is there already money included here for ongoing maintenance?
It is.
Okay. It's part of the,
It is part of the $4.3 million.
okay. How do we ensure that the camera footage is secure? What kind of measures do we have?
So one, it's going to be on our secure network. So that is right off the bat, that is the benefit. We have 800 to 900 miles of fiber buried across Washington, D.C., and that is our network. We own it, we operate it, we maintain it. So that in itself is one of the biggest security bonuses to this. In general, this also puts this into what I like to always refer to as like our common operating model, which makes it easier for us to put in place security and governance and risk controls. So we only have to do this one time as opposed to working with different vendors or different camera solutions. This puts a unified camera solution in place that we'll be able to govern, we'll be able to monitor from day one. So security will be built into the project from day one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What kind of security redundancies do we have for our secure network?
We take a multi-layered approach to security. So in general, you can't operate on our secure network without authentication, without authorization. On top of that, it is all of our network activity, passes through layers upon layers of firewalls, layers upon layers of managed trust solutions that can prevent bad actors from coming in. We also have a series of best-in-class vendors that help us to manage the operational day-to-day, that not manage, but provide us with solutions that help us manage the day-to-day security concerns that a city of our size would see.
I have more questions that I'm not going to ask right now.
Yep.
About the security. Okay. Similarly, OCTO purchases equipment and machinery line item in the budget went from 0 to 2.4 million in FY26. What is that for? Is that part of this?
Councilmember, that's part of it. The $2.4 million is for the actual 2,000 camera devices
Got
in
it.
26.
Yep. Yep.
2.4 for the cameras, 1.3 for the maintenance. Okay,
Correct.
and that's for 2,000
Yes.
cameras. So the 6,000 is in the out years? I mean, the
Yes.
other 4,000 is in the out
For the
years?
remainder.
For the remainder, yes.
Y28.
Okay, got it, got it.
Mhm.
There's a $1.7 million increase in your development and operations line item. Can you detail how this funding will be allocated?
Yes, sure. So this $900,000 of this covers the licenses for what I talked about as our HR service delivery platform. These, we try to manage this centrally. It is ServiceNow is one big platform that's used by multiple agencies, and our enterprise contracts and license team handles that.
Is
as
it
a suite by
PeopleSoft?
contract. It is not PeopleSoft. That's ServiceNow.
ServiceNow, okay.
ServiceNow. So, having it come through, having that money budgeted and knowing it's there helps us to create just a more efficient enterprise contract for that case. The remaining $800,000 on that goes towards our productivity program, our platform's productivity program, where we're modernizing and upgrading old applications, creating those portals or creating those single port of entries. We're trying to do everything we can to automate and upgrade those into the Microsoft Power Platform tools that we have focused on for things like the business portal, things like the Most portal. This funding covers the licenses and some of the professional services associated with the development, the solution architecture, the design, the data integrations, and all the analytics behind that.
And this is a service that we use to operate government. It's not a client service?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about the $5.2 million increase under information technology infrastructure, but a decrease of 1 FTE.
Councilmember, this is not really a decrease. This is a realignment of funding. I meant to say it's an increase, but a realignment from the Information Technology Security Division. We're basically moving the funding for the Enterprise Collaboration and Productivity Platform under our email team. So last fiscal year, this was an enhancement, and we're just readjusting it for this fiscal year. And there's no impact to the FT. We just consolidated the function.
What about the $882,000 increase in the applications division? What is that for?
Yeah, so this is related to what I talked about just a few minutes ago, that the platform productivity program that we're putting in place, where we're modernizing our applications, doing some process analysis and automating everything that we can using that Power Platform tools. This $882,000 covers licenses, some of the services again, and additionally, the architecture and design.
It looks like your security operations are seeing a $6.9 million reduction, which seems concerning. Is that a reduction or a realignment?
This is a realignment, the one that we just mentioned from our information technology division. So it's essentially just realigning out of the security bucket into our email program, and we continue our investments in security, no impact.
What about the $791,000 increase for cybersecurity infrastructure? What is that?
Yeah, so this is part of Mayor Bowser's continuing investments in government operations, and this is an increase to support the maintenance and upkeep of recently deployed tools that we put in place. Also, this is part of end-of-life hardware replacements on our network, and it also helps with additional wireless deployments.
With the $2.3 million in one-time funding no longer being available, will that impact any programs or FTEs?
No impact. We can support the core mission of our agency.
All right. $3 million for procurement application support, which is described as supporting PASS. OCP also has its own team working on PASS. What activities or FTEs does this funding support, and how does it differ from the work done by OCP's internal team?
Yep. So this is kind of an evergreen piece of our budget. It's unchanged from last year and from, I believe, in not much change from years past, but we continue to offer the primary on-premise support for the current system. We continue to provide technical services as well to OCP to enhance as needed. So there's a lot of every year, even though it's an older system and we are looking to modernize, we still have to do some development and some support to meet regulatory changes or to meet the needs of our customers. So that's really what this funding does. It covers that day-to-day maintenance. It covers our existing server infrastructure. It ensures that we are keeping the system up with the security updates that we can put in place. It also makes sure that we are warehousing our data. It makes sure that we have the security tools on top of PASS. And it also is used to manage the integrations with the CFO's financial system diffs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What are the main technology modernization projects planned for the next fiscal year, and how will they improve service delivery for DC residents?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this. We are working on, I've talked about this a lot, even going back to performance, DC.gov modernization is one of the biggest things that we're working on. And in fiscal year 26, we'll be continuing this investment in this redesign. I think what's really important to put across is that even if we see a launch of this DC.gov portal during the fiscal year, there's still more work to do. This is always going to be a continuous improvement project for us. There's also things like the My School Out of Time most application, most.dc.gov. Again, this is another one I'm excited about, and this is another one that continues to have improvements and to onboard additional agencies in the coming year. So families today, they can go in and they can register for programs with DCPS, but we're looking to increase this adoption with other agencies to make sure that they're doing everything into again, that single entry point, that most DC portal. And we're working, again, I believe I talked about this in my testimony, we'll have continuous improvement of the Sunbucks application with DHS, which is handling benefits and approvals and support, but we do see that there'll be additional capabilities added, like an online application, eligibility checker, and of course, a parent portal. We're also planning on working with the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions to make sure that they have a functional system for interfacing with the mayor's office and with council and with the residents of the district. We do want to make sure that we make it easier for them to manage things like their licensing records or zoning decisions. We also want to make sure that we can increase transparency within that office. We're happy to do that work.
What is OCTO's approach to monitoring and evaluating the effectiveness of its programs and initiatives, and what measures have been taken to address any identified areas for improvement?
Yeah. So our state broadband office assesses its 5-year digital action plan's progress, its outcomes, and its impact on a regular basis. Those evaluations help guide our updates to the plan and its programs. Again, we're very feedback driven in that regard. And then we also have had a focus on refining our performance plan so that we're increasing our transparency and accountability. And currently this aligns with the current budget and with initiatives, and we're aiming to improve our customer experiences by, taking in those areas of improvement that we hear through these feedback loops or hear through this community engagement and aligning it with industry best practices and making sure that we have the data that helps us to show those successes.
You've talked about the DC.gov modernization a couple times today. What's the timeline for that?
So in fiscal year 25, we started this project with support from Mayor Bowser and her team. We finalized the look and feel at this point. So we have the design kind of polished and ready to go. We're currently working through a little bit of an iterative process to make sure that we can put this in place with this enhanced user experience, with enhanced functionality, with a new digital branding strategy. So we have worked with DSLBD and OCP, where we identified a local business, a CBE, to support this development and to support the implementation. Right now, OCTO is focused on working with agencies for a phase 1 of this project, which is a content audit. And I think what's really important about this is, the DC Gov website itself has been around for a very long time, and there's still content that has been around on that website for a very long time. And we need to make sure that that content is up to date and accurate and not providing a disservice. So that's where we are today on this. We're also developing site maps so that we can, as we perform this migration, we understand where content is going to go and that it's organized in the right way. So far, we have completed 40 of 160 assignments, so that puts us at about 25% along the way right now. We continue this focus throughout the coming months, and we do believe that in the next fiscal year, there will be a launch of dc.gov, at the DC.gov homepage, and we'll work with agencies to start onboarding them in as well. It'll be within 3 to 6 months of the start of the fiscal year.
Thank you. Can you provide an update on the archives project and highlight any funding allocated in your budget for the project?
OCTO does not currently have any funding for the archives project. However, I have regular conversations with the Office of the Secretary and with the office, with the archives office, with Director Matthews, and we are prepared to support them when they are prepared for us to step in.
Thank you. You've got a one-time increase of $1,024,000 to support DCHR service delivery platform. Is this what you've been talking about? Is this something different?
Yeah, so this goes in to support those the licenses for the HR service delivery platform, as well as to ensure that, this goes in to support that.
This is PeopleSoft?
No,
This is the other thing.
This is that ServiceNow side, yep.
Okay.
So this is every employee managed by DCHR, not managed by DCHR, but as part of the DCHR scope.
To the extent you're able to talk about them, what are the current and anticipated cybersecurity threats, and what are we doing to improve security?
Yeah. So, I mean, as you're aware, and everyone should know this, so the cybersecurity threat landscape is continuously evolving. It's changing every day. Every day I wake up, there could be a new zero-day threat that's coming out that is can impact a system that we just stood up yesterday or impact a system we stood up 20 years ago. So it's always evolving in unexpected ways. We try to plan as much for the future by documenting where we are today. So that's working to understand our risk profile, making sure that we understand the priorities of where we need to have our security apparatuses, and investing where we see these new threats emerging. We work with a number of partners on this. We have a number of platforms that we work with as well. And we do what we can. As example, something like artificial intelligence is becoming a big part of this threat landscape now, where they're using, bad actors will use AI to put together a better attempt at phishing someone. It helps them to be more grammatically correct, probably more grammatically correct than I can be, but it also helps them to be easily understood by anyone. If you used an AI tool, it's very easy to tell it, hey, can you rewrite this for me, so that it's, gets understood by so-and-so, and it'll do it. We also work to understand persistent threats, to make sure that we can adapt our defenses to those persistent threats as they come in. We also put in place automated tools where our partners provide us, with the capabilities to identify weaknesses that they've identified, so that we can work on our vulnerability mitigation as that goes through. Those are like continuously monitoring our systems and our platforms against the definition of known threats or emerging threats that are documented by those third parties. We also think a lot about deepfake technologies, and this becomes a bigger issue now that you see things like AI tools that can do videos or can do audio or can do photos. And this is always a big concern. This has gotten better year over year over year. I remember previous CTO giving examples of a building that almost looked like the Pentagon. Now it can generate buildings that look exactly like the Pentagon. And we also think a lot about how we can use these tools to reduce fraud. And again, AI is a big piece of supporting bad actors in finding holes in government services to try to bypass verification and authentication to get benefits or something along those lines. So again, we work with partners to try to reduce that. We 100% anticipate increased risks from these generative AI tools, from machine learning. They're getting better at creating malicious code. They're getting better at creating good code for us on the inside, but that also means bad actors can generate code themselves now with the intent of penetrating our systems or with the intent of fooling our users. There's also AI, again, as I said earlier, it helps with social engineering. It helps them to kind of talk to people on their terms to get them to do horrible things. No matter what, there's always the threat of those zero-day vulnerabilities that I mentioned, and we put as many controls in place on top of our most sensitive systems to ensure those zero-day threats can be easily mitigated, captured, or known and talked about. I think really the last thing to really talk about is we have implemented the most advanced threat detection systems that are available in the marketplace. We provide mandatory cybersecurity awareness training for all district employees every year, and we do our best to push that out and make sure that we have 100% compliance. I'm very proud to say OCTO was 100% compliant with its mandatory cybersecurity training this year. We conduct rigorous and ongoing security assessments of systems and platforms before they could in place, and that includes a very rigorous process around our AI tools that's spelled out in the mayor's order and through documentation that we have publicly available on our website. We also regularly test our systems we regularly test our systems with penetration testing tools to make sure that we don't have any issues again that were developed years ago or came about through the continuous threat landscape that is ever evolving. So our team, our Chief Information Security Officer, myself, our Deputy CTO, and our security operations team, we remain committed to staying ahead of everything that we can in the cybersecurity landscape and that vulnerability landscape. And our partners help us to continuously monitor everything that we do, and they're a great feedback loop for ways that we can improve. We're also open to anything that we hear from the general public. If you find an issue with our systems, we will work with you through our Security Operations Center to fix any issues that they find.
Thank you.
Yep.
What are your cybersecurity goals over the next few years?
Yeah, so one of the biggest ones that we work on, we call it single sign-on. So single sign-on will help us to put in place kind of a standard authentication mechanism across all of our applications, whether you're coming in from inside the government as a DC government employee, but also we started these initiatives around our resident facing and business facing tooling now too. So that allows us to have a seamless experience from application to application, which is great from a customer experience perspective, but it also allows us to put in place tools like multi-factor authentication. It also allows us to closely monitor the identity verification that's happening in our applications as well. So that single sign-on implementation is our number one cybersecurity goal right now because it's resident and internal facing. We also have several AI-related investments and enhancements that are putting in place. Again, we are working to make sure that we have threat detection for AI-powered threat detection tools on our network to make sure our network remains secure. We also work to make sure that we are developing AI resistant verification for sensitive systems. We also look to every year adopt and update and review our governance frameworks to make sure that we're securely putting tools in place day over day. Another big one is our workforce development. So I talked about the mandatory cybersecurity training that we have. We work to make sure that we are training our agency partners, our agency users in how to use our AI tools responsibly, how to use all of our applications responsibly and ethically, and making sure that they understand the security fundamentals that we need them to understand so they can do their jobs without creating issues like getting phished or giving away their passwords. We partner with DOES to create a security program at the DC Infrastructure Academy, where we've seen a lot of success with this. We also partner. Partner with DOES on their HBCU program as well for security personnel, which is through apprenticeships, and we think that's great. And then we regularly engage with agencies like HCMA and tabletop exercises. We also regularly engage through HCMA with agencies to talk through any security concerns that we feel we need to prepare for. And, with those tabletop exercises and those regular engagements, we had a great response to the CrowdStrike threat about 11 months ago. Additionally, we work with agencies to prevent fraud. I think that is, it's very important that we do this. We've seen a lot of success with this since the pandemic. We deploy behavioral analytical tools that can detect if someone is acting weird in an application, or can detect if someone is trying to get through an identity process. We also implement a lot of cross-system data correlation to identify kind of sophisticated fraud across programs. And we have found at this point that our fraud prevention steps have eliminated about 50% through these enhanced verification controls. Lastly, we within OCTO, and we ask our agency partners as well to go through what we call continuous lifecycle management. So that's going through patching your systems on a regular basis, patching your applications on a regular basis, making sure you're doing this in a way that doesn't impact operations. We also do proactive security controls to counter those emerging threats. And I think lastly, we have a lot of vulnerability management tools that not only help detect vulnerabilities, but also help agencies understand how they can remediate those vulnerabilities.
Thank you. Can you outline any investments the mayor has proposed in artificial intelligence in your FY26 budget, and what outcomes those investments are intended to support?
So we continue to use existing funding. Mayor Bowser's order on articulating DC's artificial intelligence values and establishing artificial intelligence strategic benchmarks was put in place last year in February, and it gave us a responsibility to review all agencies' proposed use of tools for privacy and cybersecurity reasons, but also to make sure that they are aligning with 6 core values. We've been very successful in providing the service to sister agencies without any additional funding in fiscal year 25, and we plan to continue to do this in fiscal year 26. We have a tech enablement team at our agency. Again, I talked about this in my testimony, where they kind of serve as a front door, and we're utilizing that team to work with CIOs, to work with agency personnel, so that they understand their role in utilizing AI and using AI responsibly and ethically, that they understand their role in strategic planning for AI use in the future of the government, and that they understand their role in documenting the AI tools that they want to put in place. We help support agencies further by bringing in partners that help them ideate and strategize on these AI tools. We want to learn where AI has been successful. The district government operates largely. So, we work with state, county, and city partners to understand how they're using AI for permitting, or how they're using AI for, public works. There's a lot where, it goes a little bit beyond the scope of what OCTO would be knowledgeable about from a use case perspective, but we want to make sure that we're bringing in partners that can work with the agency so they can understand it. And again, we're doing this without any specific investments, but we feel it is our responsibility to responsibly put AI tools in place in the district. These information sessions that we had, I think I talked about this in our testimony, but we had over 1,000 individuals show up just to learn about the AI tools
that we're going to have in place relatively soon, and to understand the mayor's order as well. And we saw great success with the use case with these use case sessions that we had with agencies, where we had some CIOs and even some directors come in to learn about how AI is being used across governments across the United States.
How many vacancies are there in the agency?
14.
Are you having any trouble with hiring and retention?
We're not having any challenges hiring or retaining staff. It's industry standard to carry around a 10% vacancy rate to cover unforeseen personnel costs, and our current vacancy rate is about 6.8%. So we're working to fill key positions.
Which ones are you prioritizing, or would you prioritize if there wasn't a freeze?
So there's 3 key managerial positions that we would like to see filled. We're without a director of communications. We are without a manager for our cloud services program, and we're without a manager in one of our telecom programs as well. Additionally, we always have an interest in anything that can help us with data analysis. So we have key positions around data analytics and data science. There is a staff writer position as well that would be involved in our content cleanup efforts, as well as the dc.gov project. We think that that's also a key system. And there is a systems analyst position that's open that would be in our enterprise contracts and licensing team. And that is a team that regularly finds ways to save money across the city by consolidating IT contracts and working with agencies to understand their utilization of platforms and services. And we think, those 6 positions I talked about are definitely key within the 14 vacancies that we currently have.
Your budget shows an increase in 2.4 FTEs, but it looks like you have a lot of FTE reductions and increases in your budget lines. Can you confirm whether any of the positions being cut are currently filled or if they are vacancies?
The year-over-year increase really shows a 3.3% decrease from the 25 approved budget. So essentially, we eliminated 6 positions, and they're all just being consolidated across the different divisions across OCTO. So none of these positions are filled and no impact.
And you're bringing on 4.5 new FTEs through federal grant funds, is that right?
This is actually a realignment rather than adding new FT positions. We're just, these are resources that are helping with the BEAD efforts.
Okay, let's look at your capital budget, 33% decrease. The digital services modernization project is receiving 4.5 million increase in FY26 and $200,000 every subsequent year through FY30. What's the purpose of that additional funding?
So the DSM project, or Digital Services Modernization Project, this is what feeds these large-scale portals, these multi-agency collaborative efforts that we put in place. So you could think about things like the business portal work that we did with DLCP and several other agencies. Also things like the Most DC portal that we recently launched in partnership with DME and several of those agencies. So this is where that work comes from. This is a digital services modernization or technology modernization fund for OCTO, where we're going to use this and we have used this and continue to use this on projects like those portals, projects like dc.gov modernization, also projects also helping with our single sign-on initiative, because this involves having, in some cases, to develop and implement new authentication methods into existing applications. So that takes a little bit of time, a little bit of labor to do that. And lastly, this is also tied to enhancements that we're looking to make in the careers portal to make it easier for applicants to find and apply for jobs with the district government, but also to create a little bit more transparency in the process that we go through with hiring as well. Primarily, though, the biggest project with this right now is the Most portal and dc.gov.
Okay, I see that project ESI the Enterprise Cybersecurity Initiative, has a decrease of 9.2 million. Is that right?
That's correct.
Are those local funds? Oh, that's capital. So what's the purpose of the project and what impact will this reduction have on the initiative?
Yeah. So starting with the purpose, this is all about replacing end-of-life hardware, whether it be in our data centers, our core sites, or our hubs, as well as just kind of smaller footprints that are in administrative buildings like we're in today. What we're doing is we're strengthening cybersecurity by removing obsolete equipment. We're enhancing performance and reliability on that DCNet network. We're reducing our operational risk by minimizing outages because we have more modern equipment in place. We're also creating a stock so that we're prepared for emergencies, or we're prepared for any needed relocations of equipment. Even with newer equipment, sometimes things break and we need to make sure that we can quickly replace it because the government's not going to wait. This also helps us provide more modern wireless and wired connectivity in our buildings. Everyone wants more bandwidth every day, especially in our schools or in our government facilities in general. So this is a phased kind of refresh where it's every 7 years. And right now we just go through the process of prioritizing which sites this equipment will go to. To explain the cost reduction, this was a strategic and intentional decision. So we do buy equipment in bulk, which creates cost efficiencies. So if we plan things out, if we plan our buys to get things in larger quantities instead of in smaller quantities more often, we do have a better cost efficiency. In general, we do deal with supply chain issues. And that's been going back for years since the pandemic, and with the current environment that we're in, those supply chain issues continue. But we do want to make sure that we are maximizing this investment and maximizing our orders to guarantee that we are getting this equipment in a timely manner, so we can go through and update where updates need to be. We are on track to complete several of these upgrades in fiscal year 28.
Okay. And is this the entire cause of the 33% decrease in your capital budget? Or
Yes.
is there more?
No, it's again, we found cost efficiencies by placing larger orders.
Okay. It looks like, hold on a second. It looks like project CDE 23, the Cloud Data Exchange, has funding allocated for both FY 25 and 26, including an increase of 3.9 million. Can you give us an update on this project and the rationale for the increase?
Yeah, sure. So in fiscal year 25, we built the core Microsoft Azure infrastructure and created new integrations for fire and EMS to support real-time data feeds and situational awareness with our tooling. This allowed us to retire a 10-year-old system, a 10-year-old platform there. In fiscal year 26, we will continue to migrate existing integrations and APIs into this new data exchange with the goal of reducing costs and increasing efficiencies. We're continuing to develop this API marketplace for dynamic data integrations from district enterprise platforms. So that's PeopleSoft, eRisk, and QuickBase are our initial priorities, and this will allow easier integrations for agency partners that need access to that data. In 26, we're also going to see the completion of an enterprise self-service secure file transfer protocol solution. And what this does, this automates file transfers between agencies and their partners through ServiceNow ticketing, through ServiceNow requests, which can have a secure kind of approval workflow to make sure that these file transfers are happening because they need to happen and they're approved to happen. Additional funds are being requested to support infrastructure build out, including IT consultants and on-site contractors, which are going to expedite the migration of these systems and our ability to start to turn down legacy software in preference of this newer platform.
What kind of file transfers does that encompass? Like, what are people doing?
Yeah.
That can be a number of things, but we would utilize secure file transfers, just as examples inside the government. We can utilize them for older systems to move information from one system to another, like our
I see.
mainframe. That's one example, but others can be working with partners that are helping to analyze your data. We want to make sure that we're getting that data to them in a way that's going to not only preserve the data itself, because say you try to send data over an email, attachment might be too big. We may block it for security concerns. It may get blocked through security infrastructure on the other side, at the vendor side or the partner side as well. So there's a number of things that can cause problems. If we put in place a secure file transfer protocol, we have security oversight over what's being moved, when it's being moved, who had access to it, where it went. It also gives additional controls, again, on the customer side as well. Whoever's receiving the data, it can be more compliant with how they, the rules that they have in place. Secure file transfer protocols have been around for a very long time. They're definitely a very secure, very reliable process for doing this.
Thank you. I'm curious about the services demand and delivery platform, which is seeing a $6.7 million increase. Could you please expand on the purpose of the project and provide a timeline for implementation?
Yeah, of course. So we're going to use this $4.7 million to modernize our ITSM, our IT service management platform, which is currently used. It's our help desk solution. It tracks our service requests and our SLAs. And as I said in my testimony, it also creates a knowledge base, which is super helpful for self-service. This is a 6-year project. And what's important to lay out is some of the investments that we're making in the coming fiscal year, which include asset management for hardware and software. So this helps us, this helps ORM understand the landscape. It helps HCMA understand the landscape of what we have in our environments when we're doing our threat analyses. This helps to create what's called a CMDB, or configuration management database. And what that is that helps us to manage IT risk in the city. It helps to document things like technical debt, but also when we're going through a change control process or an outage, it helps us to understand exactly every piece of IT, whether it be software or hardware, that is involved in the process, and what is the service impact going to be. So we can understand that this change is about to take place, or this unplanned outage has happened with this system. Let's pull up this configuration management item. Let's take a look and see, okay, this brought down the DMV, this brought down driver services, to be more specific. And to get even more specific, this is really just going to impact, we'll say, renewals for driver's licenses. And then we can be more transparent with the DMV about that impact, and the DMV can be more transparent about that impact with their customers. So the CMDB is a really big step. This also enhances our abilities in the employee self-service portal. Again, our goal is to start looking at tools like agentic AI, or to have additional knowledge base articles about agency-specific systems, so that it doesn't take a phone call. It doesn't take a phone call to get a service request in for systems that are well known about, well documented. You can instead go into the system and say, how do I reset my password? And it'll know from the knowledge articles, all right, you're talking about resetting your password, and here's how you can go through those steps. You don't need a human to do some of these simple things. If they want a human, we can still give them a human through our call center or through email, but this agentic AI is really going to help be a front end for low risk, easily repeatable issues that we see every day. Additionally, we're looking at an investment in what we call demand management, but also project management in ServiceNow, so that we can track IT projects across OCTO, but also across the city as a whole. And again, managing projects, we can then manage the outcomes, which then feed into software and hardware asset management, which then feed into that CMDB, which then feed into our ability to respond to incidents, requests, and services across the city.
You said 4.7 million?
Yes, correct. In FY26, 4.7 million. Yes. 6 years, this is 6.7.
And it's $500,000 every year thereafter.
There you go. 6.7 million total.
And this would be kicking off in FY26. It's not currently in progress.
There are aspects of it that are currently in progress. We work with ServiceNow every day. We have a ServiceNow team that works on this. Their primary work has been focused on working with partners like DCHR to make sure we had HR service delivery stood up and launched, and then going through the initial planning and preparation steps for things like our software and hardware management. And then, of course, just continuous improvement with the requests that we take in today. So everything from international travel requests to my keyboard's not working. We're always continually looking at how that went for individuals and going through the analytics on how things were resolved. Is there additional information that we need? Are there extraneous approval steps? That's what the team kind of works on day to day. But we are going to focus on these primarily on these 5 bullet points that I talked about a moment ago in FY26.
I want to talk about some of your projects with the Office of Contracting and Procurement. OCP's capital budget includes the PASS on-premises maintenance project with a budget of over 3.5 million. OCTO is receiving over 1 million from OCP for that project. Is that correct?
Yeah, OCP has allocated $1.2 million for OCTO services. 900,000 of that is just kind of an evergreen system maintenance agreement that we've had there. And then $300,000 is going to support improving the vendor experience project that OCTO will be a partner with OCP and the CFO's office as well. So this will be executed through an MOU with OCP.
So what's the exact amount you're receiving?
1.2 million, yes. So 900,000 again for that evergreen support and system maintenance, and then 300,000 specific to improving vendor experiences.
Great, you get that. Yep. I know my best. The breakdown, you got it. Okay. When setting rates to charge agencies for your services, what benchmarks do you use?
So we use several different types of benchmarking for setting fair rates for technology services that we provide to our customers. These include vendor-neutral performance metrics, IT cost studies. We also do spending metrics per user. We focus on basically the core services are all allocated based on actual utilization of our customers. We're also focused on building out automated invoices for both our telecom as well as our IT services in the future in the ServiceNow platform.
Can we see data justifying the PASS on-premises maintenance budget?
Yeah, we can provide that.
Great.
We can work on that. No problem.
But quickly.
This is you're focused on the $900,000, the maintenance. Sure, we can work on that. There is an MOU associated with this. We'll have that information for you.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you think the same services would cost from a private contractor?
I mean, it's kind of hard to say because in general, we also probably provide services that are outside the scope of that agreement. This is the $900,000 is primarily just passing on the labor costs.
Okay.
But we provide additional resources that are, from our data team or from our applications team and our security team that are not party to that agreement, but are part of our role in making sure the data's there, making sure it's a secure system, and making sure enhancements are being put in place and thought through.
What role will OCTO play in the modernization of PASS?
So primarily at this point, we see this as not an OCTO-led project, but an OCTO consulted and guided project. So I work with Director Hateman, have for years. As we were both deputies, we also worked on how we do this. But in general, we're working with them to understand if they want to, say, for example, go towards a cloud-based solution like the CFO's office did with DIFS. We'll consult with them to understand any security governance that we need to put in place. We'll work with them to understand any usability concerns that we would get. We can also provide them with things like how to work through feedback cycles on iterative improvement that we'd hear from our vendors and suppliers, as well as from our users inside the government on how to use a tool like that. So our primary focus is around the technical services, understanding that their business needs will drive will primarily drive the selection of a tool or a platform, but they also understand that we need to vet that any selected tool for compliance with our security tooling, for its ability to operate on the district government's network, for its ability to integrate with things like single sign-on, or its ability to work with agencies like DSLBD for their process in procurement, or ORM's process, or our process as well. Technical consultancy, though.
You mentioned diffs in there.
Yeah.
Diffs sort of happened while PASS was on ice.
Correct.
And it sort of happened in a vacuum.
I wouldn't say a vacuum necessarily. There are aspects of the diffs project where OCP and OCTO and the city administrator's office were involved. As diffs was crossing over into the release, it was primarily a CFO-led project at that point.
Yeah, I mean, after
yeah.
the fact, right?
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't a collaboration until it had to be.
Yes. We don't worry about collaboration with OCP. They have been a partner in
Oh, that's not where I'm going.
a very
Okay.
long time. Okay.
That's not where I'm
Clear
going.
about that.
So
Continue.
where I'm going with this is now that diffs exists and OCP, whatever it builds, has to be compatible with that. Does it make sense to build out PASS, or does it make sense to say, what can we take from diffs and build that out?
That's certainly a consideration that we take. So again, we look at from a technology perspective and from the work that we do, just from understanding the technical landscape, we do think about trying to create as many shared platforms across agencies and across clusters as possible, because that does create cost efficiencies. It does ease the operations of a system. In general, usually what you'll hear is, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. That is increased risk. When it comes to things like procurement and financial management, they're already tightly intertwined. So all of our eggs are in one basket. You cannot procure without the financial system. You can't pay vendors without the financial system. So yes, there are considerations for things like that. I can't guarantee that's the direction that we're going to go. We do have to look at the business requirements of OCP. If a platform like Oracle ERP is compatible, it would certainly have a consideration. I just can't guarantee, because the business requirements aren't mine. The technical requirements, we already have security engineering and oversight for the financial system. We already have single sign-on plans and processes in place there. But that's also possible if OCP make a decision to continue with the product from SAP. Today we use Ariba, which is an SAP product. We would also have an advantage in that we've worked with SAP in the past and we're very familiar with the tooling there. If they were to pick a more niche product, like there's a product called Coupa, which we've never used, but is used by some cities and some counties, not really by states. That may be a little more of a technical challenge for us, and we would, consider something like that.
Like a learning curve technical challenge?
Yes.
Or an integration technical challenge?
It could be integration challenges. It could be security oversight. It could also, end up where, 90% of it can get there, and there may be a security concern that we have that comes up from an emerging threat. It could also be, and I know this is really important to the Office of Contracts and Procurement, we want to make sure that a procurement platform that we put in place is also AI ready. We want to make sure that it's ready to be open and transparent as well with its data. And those are going to be core requirements as well that we'll help with. We think transparency is a big thing. diffs is owned and operated by the CFO's office.
What type of visibility do we have into it?
They do work with our security team, so there is security visibility into that, and they also work with us on authentication services there. We're just agency users within the system itself, so our visibility into that is limited to OCTO scope. But certainly willing to have a conversation once, when we talk about the Budget Services Act and how it establishes our authority with cybersecurity and artificial intelligence.
We'll get there. Okay. And how much of the PASS modernization funding goes to OCTO?
It's Yeah, 1.2 million, as we discussed,
Okay.
currently is that scope. And that's again, looking to continue operations of the system and then work through migration, work through some of our technical priorities.
Has OCTO been involved in the CBE online marketplace project?
Yeah, so we're very interested in this, but we were consulted in the budget formulation process for that. Our team at PASS and our team of experts in application implementation were there to support gathering requirements, performing market research, and going through kind of what our requirements would be for a project like that as well. You know, historically we've supported the DC supply schedule program, so we're going to support this as well.
During OCP's budget hearing, we heard that this project, the marketplace project, depends on the completion of the past modernization effort and will work in tandem. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that's my understanding. So currently, OCP, in coordination with us at OCTO, we hired a third-party IT consultant firm to perform independent studies to find the best fit for procurement management system in the public sector. Again, that's, you know, talking about Oracle or talking about SAP or product. There's a lot of other products out there. I can't name them all, so I probably shouldn't. The study includes an assessment of the CBE marketplace capability and functionality to support that supply schedule program. It's possible that the system selected for past modernization will include that functionality. We're hoping it includes that functionality, in which case the two projects, they would kind of merge and be closely aligned. If that isn't the case, we'd work with OCP to find a third-party solution and work on integrations to make sure that it's a fully functional CBE marketplace. But yes, there is our past modernization is important. It does make it easier to integrate. It does make it easier to create a more efficient procurement process, which the CBE marketplace is hoping to put in place.
Thank you for that. So when do you think that the CBE online marketplace work really needs to commence to stay on track with the past modernization?
Yeah. When do I think? So we would work to prioritize it and hopefully coordinate and collaborate that. And we can work with you to get you an answer on that timing as we understand more about the process through this third-party vendor that's helping us to analyze that landscape.
Okay. Let's move on to the BSA.
I'll definitely get back to you. I'm sorry I don't have the time.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, let's move on to the BSA. Subtitle for OCTO titled Cybersecurity and Artificial Intelligence. What's the overall goal of this subtitle? What specific problem is it aiming to solve?
Yeah. So we are utilizing this BSA to refine and clarify the scope of our authority. In particular, we'll talk about cybersecurity. We want to make sure that information technology services provided across the DC government and throughout our proposed budget are efficiently and centrally managed from a security perspective. Centralized IT is not only efficient and effective, it's easier to secure, it's easier to manage, it's easier to govern, especially in a large, complex environment like the district government, where we have many agencies and many systems. The BSA language is putting us on the best possible footing to provide service district-wide. I like to think of this as, you know, we operate primarily off of things like city administrator orders or mayor's orders today. They have expiration dates. Changing our statute doesn't have an expiration date and gives us the, you know, the capability to have continued cybersecurity, our continued leadership role in cybersecurity, regardless of the administration, which I think is an important legacy for this agency.
The subtitle has some identical language to a subtitle that included in the FY24 Budget Support Act. What's the difference?
So as I said in my testimony, you know, it's not too much of a difference. I mean, we're not trying to redefine anything around information technology. Again, we're just trying to make sure that it is spelled out that it shouldn't be thought of as separate from IT, that it's always going to be IT. What we think of as AI has always been IT. We just would like to make sure that technology, whether it's software, hardware, AI, cybersecurity, whatever, anything that is that is operating in the district as technology goes through the same governance, the same risk modeling, the same documentation that we ask everything to go through. The language does not allow us to purchase, develop, or deploy AI in any way that we're not currently allowed to. It also is intended to help avoid confusion by expressly including emerging technologies, right? The DC Code's grant of authority, again, it trumps things like mayor's orders and city administrator orders that we currently operate off of, and that's cybersecurity and AI space.
We move on. Or do you need 46? Okay. Yes. Again with that one. Okay, and then this is the same subtitle. We're done? Okay. Okay. All right, those are all the questions that I have for you today, Mr. Chief Technology Officer.
Thank you.
And this concludes the OCTO portion of today's hearing. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Chairperson Nadeau and staff and the Committee on Public Works and Operations. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank
You too. We'll now turn to our second government witness, Jed Ross, Chief Risk Officer and Director of the Office of Risk Management. Before providing testimony, I'll administer the oath, so come on over and get set up. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Wonderful. You may begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Chairperson Nadeau, committee members, and council staff. I am Jed Ross, Chief Risk Officer and Director of the District of Columbia's Office of Risk Management, ORM. It is my privilege to testify in support of Mayor Bowser's Grow DC budget. I am honored to work as a district employee serving under Mayor Bowser's leadership. Since taking office, Mayor Bowser has made Washington a better place to live for all its residents in all 8 wards. Under her leadership, the district can be proud of investments that have helped produce a new hospital east of the river, more affordable housing, consistent enrollment growth across the district's public schools, increased satisfaction in city services, and increased investment in programs and policies that allow more families to live and thrive across the city. As a district resident, I also would like to express gratitude to you, Chairperson Nadeau, and members of the committee for your leadership and support. On May 27th, 2025, Mayor Muriel Bowser presented her fiscal year 2026 budget and financial plan. Regardless of budget and other constraints, I remain enthusiastic that ORM is prepared to support the priorities outlined in the mayor's plan, from public safety to education and to key economic drivers. Through our 4 budget codes, BG0, ZH0, RJ0, and RK0, ORM has the resources it requires to operate and protect the district's people, property, and assets. The Public Sector Workers' Compensation Program, PSWCP, administers disability benefits for district government employees when there is a personal injury sustained on the job. These benefits are paid out of the Employee Compensation Fund, BG0, for eligible and verified claims of injury. The range of costs covered under this fund include compensation for lost wages, medical services related to workplace injuries, and return to work services such as vocational rehab. In fiscal year 26, one of ORM's key focuses will be improving vendor and provider relations. I'm hopeful this will increase the number of care providers in and near the district while also expanding the working relationship and communication between us and our provider community, with a goal of improving medical care for injured workers in the process. The Employee Compensation Fund proposed budget for fiscal year 2026 is $18,285,541 with 51 full-time employees. This is a decrease of $620,197 from fiscal year 2025, yet still allows the district to continue to offer appropriate care and customer service to its injured workers as required by law. The Settlements and Judgment Fund, ZH0, is managed through our Tort Division in conjunction with the Office of the Attorney General. The Tort Division investigates and resolves tort liability claims filed against the district. Once a claim has been received and logged into the claims database, it is assigned to an adjuster for investigation and treatment. The program also works to collect revenue and issues payments related to subrogation and settlements across various agencies. For fiscal year 2026, the proposed budget for the Settlement and Judgments Fund is $24 million, an increase of $2,975,241 from fiscal year 2025, reflecting the increased cost of litigation and settlements. The captive insurance agency, RJ0, provides medical malpractice insurance for eligible local nonprofit health centers and procures insurance policies on behalf of the district. The captive insurance agency staff works to procure insurance policies to minimize the risk of loss to the district government. This budget supports these efforts along with all ancillary necessary projects, including property appraisals, loss control efforts, and claims management. The fiscal year 2026 budget for RJ0 is $11,732,526 with 6 FTEs, which includes 2 FTEs dedicated to subrogation collections. The fiscal year 2026 budget represents an increase of $360,827 from fiscal year 2025 to account for increased insurance premiums and for professional service contracts such as property appraisals. The Office of Risk Management Budget Code, RK0, includes the agency's general operations and has a major impact on the risk prevention and safety program projects. The RPS program provides training and direction for district government agencies and their agency risk management representatives, ARMRs, to plan responses to various workplace hazards and to exercise evacuation protocols. The program also consists of occupational safety and health specialists who conduct risk and safety inspections to ensure a safe environment for employees and constituents who conduct business in our buildings owned and operated by the district government. RPS program staff also triage incidents reported to ORM. Finally, among other things, the RPS program manages the How Am I Driving subprogram, which tracks district government drivers' performance through complaints and compliments to DC 311. The fiscal year 2026 budget is $4,465,127 with 32 FTEs. This reflects a decrease of $212,112 from fiscal year 2025 for the RK0 budget. Through these primary programs, ORM will continue to provide operational support and service to our constituents, agencies, and district government employees. In addition to the more specific program work, I want to highlight ORM's customer service through the timely processing of hundreds of pieces of mail per month, mostly medical bills, answering customer calls within 3 rings or less, and constantly making improvements to our e-risk system, making it more user-friendly and accessible. ORM remains persistent in our approach and will strive to provide the best level of customer service possible. In addition, Councilmember, I wanted to note that I just received an email for the month of May. My fantastic colleagues in the administrative management team said that we were 100% in answering every single phone call within 3 rings or less, and getting, over almost 400 pieces of mail out timely, taking care of everyone's needs. Moreover, I would be remiss if I ended this testimony without a shout out to the amazing team at ORM. The team's hard work and dedication often goes unrecognized, given the nature of our work. I would like to especially recognize Valerie Evans, our administrative officer, who spends countless hours pulling together materials and resources responsive to ongoing requests. I also want to acknowledge my executive assistant and program analyst, Nia Stewart, who keeps me on track. And lastly, but certainly not least, I'm grateful to our Deputy Director, Sam Young, for his tireless efforts to make sure ORM accomplishes its goals and objectives. I'm proud to work with them and all the hardworking staff and managers at ORM. Thank you, Chairperson Nadeau and committee members, for accepting my budget testimony. The fiscal year 26 budget reflects the impacts of the current times and Mayor Bowser's ongoing commitment to good government, fiscal responsibility, growing our budget through revenue, and our shared DC values. Our team at ORM and I appreciate your support and continued partnership. At this time, I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. In your testimony, you spoke to some of the budgetary changes that are happening in many of the different funds that ORM administers, but doesn't necessarily have budgetary control over. What's your working relationship like with the agencies who determine the budgets for the compensation fund, the settlements fund, and the captive insurance fund?
So we have monthly meetings with the AFO, with our AFO, and dialogue with the mayor's budget office and budget team. Moreover, we have additional meetings as needed with agencies about their fiscal health. So, when we get information about agencies having challenges, causing harm, or causing financial losses that then impact the funds, we will go out and do specialized training, specialized conversations as necessary if we're seeing issues related to those agencies.
Okay, that makes sense. In your testimony, you said that the employees' compensation fund is being decreased by more than $620,000, but the PSWC will still be able to provide appropriate care and services. Can you explain why the decrease is occurring?
Yes, Councilmember and Chair, thank you. This actually is putting us on par with the fiscal 24 actual spend. So it's meeting kind of what we spent in the last fiscal year. So, it's our expectation that we'll be able to manage based on that. Moreover, should there be any issues, unexpected catastrophic claims or other concerns, we will work with the budget office on that. But we're really meeting our on par actual spend for fiscal year 24 with those numbers.
And is that a reflection of changes in the number of claims or the dollar amount of claims or payments?
Dollar amount. Generally, Chair, the nature of claims, whether it be tort claims or workers' comp claims, you never know what might happen. If somebody has a really significant injury, it could cost a lot of money. If there's a significant loss in a tort claim, it could be lots of money for a settlement. So depending on what happens from year to year or what's been in the pipeline, you can't always trend exactly. So that unfortunately, there's no way to exactly say. We can have a higher frequency of losses. We can have, this year we're having more claims filed, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to cost us more because they could be all low dollar claims.
You also said that in FY26, one of ORM's key focuses will be improving vending and provider relations. How do you plan to do that?
In working with our provider relations team and the workers' compensation team, one of the goals and efforts that we want to undertake is doing more outreach to our vendors and provider relations folks. We've already, bringing people in to work with the agency to understand our processes, seeing how we can get more people engaged to participate in our program. And then, of course, just making sure we're maintaining those relationships by following up and ensuring that care is good and adequate, better than good. And then ensuring that if we're not meeting the mark by getting bills paid timely or other things are happening in reviews and approvals, that we figure out how we can better improve our processes so we keep those vendors happy.
You said that the Settlements and Judgments Fund is facing an increase of more than $2,900,000, reflecting the increased cost of litigation and settlements. The BSA subtitle on limiting liability for the district also noted that the district exceeded its settlements and judgments budget by nearly $10 million. That's a huge increase. It seems very concerning from a risk management perspective. Can you speak to why there's been such an increase in expenses for this fund?
So some of the increases may be due to the administrative closing in Superior Court during the pandemic, and a lot of cases were pending at that time. Many of those cases were deferred for trial. There's also strong anecdotal evidence of increasing jury verdicts. This is something that in the risk management realm and talking to colleagues around the country, there are just more and more nuclear verdicts where juries and the courts are awarding larger dollar amounts. And it is just a consistent trend and something that we have to look at. We expect it to continue, but there are ways to try and mitigate that, being proactive, reducing litigation costs, reducing attorneys' fees, being judicial and economical is really important for, I think, the whole system in order to make sure that we're keeping those costs down as best as possible.
The BSA subtitle sets limits to damages, including $500,000 for single incidents or $1 million for intentional wrongful acts. What was the average cost of claims paid out so far in FY25?
The average cost of claims, I will have to work on that number for you, but I can speak a little bit about the thresholds if you like, or
Yeah.
So let me just speak high level about it. So limits and caps protect the public fisc. They facilitate settlements and claims without resorting to litigation. So limits balance the need for individual compensation against the larger public consideration of curtailing awards that often far exceed economic losses. So oftentimes people will get paid for things, these huge judgments that don't actually correlate to what they actually lost, right? What the harm actually was. And the recent trend here, as I talked about, is for increases in that. And so we went to work in terms of looking at what our neighboring jurisdictions and all states around the United States are doing as it relates to the cap. And so we're proposing something that is actually higher than both Maryland and Virginia. They have lower amounts than we're proposing here. But Pennsylvania, Delaware, they're all limitations. West Virginia, all limitations that are much lower or lower than what we're proposing in the BSA.
I do understand that from a risk management perspective, but I'm concerned about it a bit from a civil justice perspective. So 2 of the recent settlements were for truly tragic events. If I understand correctly, one was for a person who was killed being run over by a street sweeper, and another was someone who became paraplegic after an accident. It's hard for me to imagine that those families feel the damage caused to their loved ones or the loss of life should be capped or are not worth more than $500,000.
What I can say, Councilmember, is Maryland has a $400,000 limit. Virginia's a $100,000 limit. So and we just talked about the disturbing trend in the costs. The same thing happened years ago with wrongful convictions, and we had, I think it was about 5 or 6 circumstances that were federal government failures, in my opinion, but resulted in $55–60 million in taxpayer funds because there was no cap. And the same could be said for a jury verdict for $40 million, and there would be no cap. So that is why all of the states, generally, there are 34 states that have these types of caps in place. With this proposal, we would be higher than Maryland. We would be much higher than Virginia. We're higher than Pennsylvania, higher than Delaware, higher than West Virginia. they limit, some of the states even limit the ability, saying that there's no ability to sue the state except for if there's an insurance policy, and that it's to the limit of the insurance policy. Again, it's balancing the fisc of the public finances against nuclear verdicts that are just overly broad or overly expensive.
Do we have insurance for this?
We do not. We are self-insured. The District of Columbia, it is the district's budget that pays out for any of these major losses. And so, as you said, the settlement and judgment fund had been exceeded. That will continue to happen, and we will continue to just be pulling from the general fund of the taxpayer dollar to pay for large settlements without this type of protection from our fiscal practices.
How many cases would this subtitle have applied to so far in FY25?
So in FY24, there are 9 claims in excess of the proposed limits, and about 7 without a specific demand amount, meaning it could be $60 million. You know, I've heard people request $180 million, you know, depending on the circumstances. There were 1,764 claims overall last year, so about 9 were in excess of that. In fiscal year 25 to date, there are 12 claims in excess of the proposed limits, 5 without a specific demand. So far this fiscal year, we've received a total of 1,234 claims. I will note these are our claims received by our tort division. These are not necessarily constitutional claims that don't come to the Office of Risk Management and go directly to the courts that OAG then works to manage, which often those can be in excess of these amounts as well.
But the cap would apply to both.
Correct. I'll double check on that, but I believe the cap should apply generally to both of us. And I did get the numbers related to the price per claim. It's around $8,700, $8,760 or so was kind of the average per claim.
Claims so far this year that will exceed. What's going on? Why do we have cases that are causing this risk?
So let me just backtrack real fast, council members. So the constitutional claims, the cap will not apply to that, just to be clear.
It would not apply to
It would not
constitutional
apply.
claims.
Correct. But secondarily, related to why we have a claim, we can't really speak to that. You know, as I've discussed, an accident can happen, an injury can happen, a loss can happen for any number of reasons. Some years it can be significant. Obviously, during the pandemic, they were less because there were less people out and about. Just depends on what may or may not happen. It depends on how significant it is. That is why our risk prevention and safety program and the protocols that we put in place are so important to reduce the potential for these losses, to be proactive in working with agencies to mitigate and prevent us from having claims and lawsuits and losses. Each year, it can be something high, it can be lower. It really just depends on what happens in the daily business of the District of Columbia government.
The 12 does not include constitutional claims?
No, but only 12 claims out of 1,234 is not such a large number, around 1%. So, you know, we're not talking about huge numbers. Also, just because it's a claim doesn't necessarily mean that we are liable or responsible. So somebody can file a claim and we will, you know, work to defend the District of Columbia as it relates to that particular matter. Oftentimes we are not responsible or the Attorney General will go to trial and win that case.
Yeah.
So it just depends on the circumstances.
So I guess I'm wondering how you know that this will reduce costs by $4 million a year per the fiscal impact statement of the BSA.
Looking at some of those prior years, as we've discussed, there were claims and losses that exceeded the amount of money, and so it would have actually had a positive impact in that regard. And the expectation is While I can't say definitively what will happen next year, there are trends, and the trends are that we've had, just as I said, there were 5 last year, there were 12, there were 9 last year, there were 12 this year, there were more in the prior fiscal year. It has the impact to have a benefit. And the other benefit of having this cap is it gives certainty. One of the challenges with an unknown, with no cap, there's an inability to negotiate, an inability to work through, an inability to solve litigation costs. Oftentimes, the attorney's fees can often exceed the losses in the lawsuits that take years of appeals and processes. So it creates a judicial economy. It creates a universe in which people understand and know what is going to happen. People can be transparent and clear with their clients. It creates a process for economy and economy of the judicial process. And so if we have an unknown, which is as I said, there were unspecified damages in a lot of these cases. It's because they don't even have to put forward an amount. And as the chief risk officer, I'm unable to even say we're potentially exposed for X dollars because I don't even have the ability to quantify that information. Whereas if there was a cap in place, I would.
So the FIS is kind of an estimate.
Well, I think that there are prior years that show that that's what it is. That there have been losses that well exceed that amount, and $4 million is I think, pretty probably conservative number as it relates to that. There was not, we're going to have $20 million saved, right? I think it was a conservative number, and I think that it was done based on trending from prior years, many, many years of exceeding the settlement and judgment fund budget over and over and over, unfortunately.
It feels a bit like putting a cap in place as a way to reduce our risk, but not a mechanism for reducing the actual incidents that have led to our financial risk.
So injuries, accidents, they are going to happen. And that is where our risk prevention and safety program comes in. The testimony from Mr. Lakotas was great in that, it's talking about what are we doing proactive. I look forward to talking about that, but that is our job. That's why we have safety and health team members to go look out at our buildings. That's why DDOT is constantly looking at sidewalks and fixing things. There is being proactive, spending money on health and safety is a surefire way of reducing our losses. So we're doing that. The problem is things will still happen. And then on the back end, if there is no certainty about what may or may not happen, it creates an environment where there's not a willingness to settle. There's not there are times when with the Attorney General, we're working to try and close out settlements, claims, lawsuits. We're trying to close them out. And unfortunately, the other side says, I'm going to go to a jury and hope for $60 million. And so there's an unwillingness for them to participate in the process with the hope, the dice roll that they might get huge sums of money. And so we're not able to be efficient. We're not able to be economical with our time, with our taxpayer dollars. And unfortunately, then the Attorney General has significant caseloads that they have trouble managing. And so the same for our office. If people know that there is a place, there's a ceiling, then they're going to respond accordingly to it. It creates judicial economy, and it creates an opportunity for us to work with folks to settle things out and resolve it without litigation, without wasting their time years before they get paid on different circumstances.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about someone who is quadriplegic because of something that happened in our government, and $500,000 is not going to help him live for the rest of his life.
I'm not a heartless person. I fully agree, understand. I will say Maryland is at $400,000 and Virginia's at $100,000. There are, and they have been for many, many years. So that, it doesn't mean that there isn't an economic or economic damages versus pain and suffering. Those are all analyses that can take place in our policy decisions. But I will say what we're proposing is still more than all of our neighboring jurisdictions. And there are 34 other states doing, that have had this in place for many, many years in comparison to the district.
But I didn't run for office in any of those places.
Understood.
What happens to the pending cases if this goes into effect?
It would only take place for, when it goes into effect, anything that happens after that, any final things that occur after that is where it would have an impact.
Does that pertain to when the incident occurred or by when the case is filed?
It should be that it should be that it will take place upon the settlement or the judgment. If that happens after the fact, then it would be in effect. So it would be in effect, and then any decision or any final ruling after that would go into place, not necessarily that the case was filed before the law went into effect.
Oh, so anything that's not settled before October, if this passes, would be, so all those 12 cases, for example?
Potentially, yes. And those cases—
It's kind of the opposite of what you just said.
Well, just to be clear, I mean, the claims that were filed with our office, not cases, but the claims that were filed with our office that potentially exceed that amount of money, those can go on for years before we could talk about 3, 4, 5 years. They could go on before they get to litigation, before the courts would have a ruling or a judgment against the district. If the law goes into effect, it would only apply to cases filed in court on or after October 1 is what it would be, actually. So claims filed with our office are not necessarily the trigger that we're talking about. It's pre-litigation, but the litigation that actually is filed on or after is when it would go into effect.
Do you have any concern that this might cause a bunch of people to file in court before they've gone through your process?
No. Ultimately, the process, at some point you have to put the process in place, and some point people will file. There's statute of limitations, there are different elements that, trigger as to when it participates. Just as a, the district, there was a case that involved an armed carjacker that ended up being slowly pursued by an MPD officer, very slowly. And there was that armed carjacker was speeding 30 miles an hour, well beyond what the police officer was doing, right? So not even really giving chase in any way, shape, or form. And that armed carjacker T-boned an Uber and hurt somebody significantly. And in that circumstance, the district taxpayers, because that police officer merely followed that individual, were, I think, well exceeding $10 million, having to pay out, I think it was around 16, if I recall correctly, when really the district police officer did not, in my personal opinion, do anything wrong. They weren't really doing anything, but there was a question as to what that jury may or may not have done. And obviously there was an individual who was in the vehicle, in the Uber, who got hurt really bad, and they were just seeking deep pockets. And I understand that their lives were really terribly impacted, and it was terrible, but I don't necessarily agree that it was the district taxpayers that somehow are responsible for the armed carjacker taking a car, threatening a senior citizen, with a deadly weapon, and then speeding through the district streets with that vehicle, that some of the taxpayers are going to have to pay and burden that, be burdened for something that really nothing that they didn't do so wrong.
Yeah,
And so
it does seem like maybe there's more to say about the determination of liability in that case rather than the payout, though.
Well, unfortunately, there was a question in whether or not the jury would say, because there was no other party to pay. The armed carjacker wasn't going to pay for the rest of that individual's life. There was no money for that individual based on the bad actor. So should the taxpayers have to pay for that? And that I think is ultimately partly here the question, and why other jurisdictions have a cap, right? It explains why this process is in place and why it's clear what will and won't happen, and why people should have the opportunity to buy insurance for long-term care and for short-term care. There are mechanisms that people can pursue in order to protect themselves, or buying insurance for their vehicle that also covers medical costs. Those are all things that, everyone has a choice to pursue and follow in their lives. And why insurance, I think, is good for society, right? That everyone's kind of pooling their money together in order to protect everyone else. So, we knew that there was a jury risk for that particular matter, where the taxpayers could have potentially lost $60 million, $80 million. Whether or not that the police officer 30 or 40 miles, going 30 or 35 miles an hour following a car that was going over 70 miles an hour and was well far away would actually be something that would be ruled upon is a big unknown. And so, providing something for that individual in order to have clarity was great. And it gave us an ability to control and understand what was going to happen. But the challenge is, were we even really liable? And would the jury have said that or not? They'll see an individual who really, a vibrant, wonderful individual, participating member of our community, and they're going to look for money to be able to pay that individual for the harm that was caused by a third party, wasn't a district government employee. And so that's the reality of some of what we're dealing with.
Understood. But you're also dealing with, street sweeper running over a person, which is absolutely our liability, and that's a loss of life. So I think this is complicated, and it's not something I really appreciate seeing in the BSA, where we don't have to have, we don't have a full legislative process, because I think it's something that deserves more conversation.
Chair, I totally understand your point. I will say, given where we are economically, given where we are for years having significant settlements and not settlements, significant awards against the District of Columbia, where there are other jurisdictions who are much more stringent than we are. We felt it was appropriate.
Okay. The captive insurance budget represents an increase of more than $360,000 to account for increased insurance premiums and for professional service contracts such as property appraisals. Last year, there was a $250,000 increase for real property appraisals because the district hadn't done appraisals in almost 10 years. Is this increase a result of those appraisals and obtaining more accurate insurance coverage?
No, that is not what the increase is related to. It's more related to the one-time charges to be able to do the appraisals, to do additional appraisals.
Got it.
We're always going to look to get the most accurate data from the appraisals, which could have an impact if it says all of a sudden the value of the properties are significant, but it wasn't a direct correlation that there was a that amount of increase based on the premium.
With the $250,000 is what you paid to do the appraisals. What's the $360,000?
So we are, in addition, the $360 is an increase for insurance policies related to aviation and special events, aviation and drones. So we're actually covering our helicopters and our drones, and then all of the special events that are happening in the city, happening in your ward. Those special events, we're making sure we're buying insurance policies for those. Not every single one per se, but that's what the money is going towards, the ability to pay for insurance for those functions.
Aviation and drones is one thing and special events is the other?
Correct.
They're not together?
Not together.
Okay.
Separate things.
So we're
combined.
paying more for special events. So we're not, okay. So does this solve some of the costs that people are being charged for their special events?
What it is it's actually working to more centrally fund some of these things that
Okay.
are happening amongst all the agencies.
That's good.
Yes, exactly.
Could it bring costs down for event organizers?
Definitely it can be helpful. I mean, if we're purchasing but generally what these special events are is the District of Columbia is putting on an event, And then we're
Got it.
being required to have special events covered.
You know what else would bring down costs? Deployable barriers instead of our vehicles and overtime. And we have a bill for that. So stand by. Okay. There's a $250,000 reduction under captive insurance services in professional services fees and contracts. What's that?
I believe this is a one-time, so it wasn't a reoccurring amount, and then it's been switched to a one-time in order to finish doing appraisals, I believe.
How many appraisals did you do last year?
I think we did 160 or 180 roundabout. We got done in a very short period of time, which was fantastic. And then this year we've worked to get around 300 completed. So we're working hard, we're working fast. And just, I want to give a big shout out to both our partners at DGS and to the ORM team members, Chris Bass, on all the insurance, the Robert Preston, and all of our insurance team members. They are physically going out to these buildings along with the DGS staff to open them up for the appraisers, which is, I mean, it sounds very simple when I talk about it, but the amount of coordination to go to 460 buildings in the District of Columbia and look at them and get appraisals done and coordinating all of that work. Who has the key? How do I get into this, space? Who's there? Is really quite significant. And both DGS and the ORM insurance team should be commended for the amount of work that they've been able to accomplish.
Do you expect an increase in insurance costs as a result of these appraisals?
I don't necessarily expect a significant increase in costs for in next fiscal year. What we don't know, and the way the insurance marketplace works, is that there can be losses. So the wildfires in California can have an impact on how much the insurance carriers are paying out. In order to balance their budget or manage their losses, they're going to take that over the entire insurance marketplace. It could be what's called a hard market, and those premiums can go up. Obviously, we pay our premium based on the total insurable value of our buildings. So if the appraisals say, yeah, the cost of that building to replace it has gone up because we hadn't done it in a long time, there can be some increased costs, but nothing dramatic. It's more dramatic specific to whether or not there's a bad insurance market. It's our goal every year to keep our insurance down. We work with our brokers. We work very hard to keep our rates as low as possible. There's an average, I'd say 3 to 5% potentially. It really depends. Some years it can be 10 or 20. The other impact that can happen that we saw post-COVID, it was the increased cost of materials, which I know you have heard about as it relates to DGS, construction costs, supply chain challenges. Those have an impact on the cost of materials and then the cost to replace a building. So that actually can have an impact on our costs. But this last year, we've done a very good job of keeping those values appropriate and making sure that we didn't have significant increases from an insurance perspective. And we hope to keep that trend for next fiscal year. I don't have a crystal ball, but that'll be our goal.
Is the Schedule A that ORM provided showing that there are 2 vacant positions, correct?
Yes.
And how long has the vacant program analyst position been empty?
So that position was given to us with the goal of the How Am I Driving program.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the fiscal challenges were encountered, that was put on hold as a freeze. But it is obviously a very important position and something that we look and once we're able to be able to get that back and up and running, as we talked earlier about driver safety programs for our risk prevention and safety division, but it is currently on hold due to the budget pressures.
So it's because of the freeze?
Correct.
So you still would like to fill that position?
Yes, I think it's a very valuable position and important. I can get into it in terms of the question the question and the comment that was brought up in the testimony from the public witness, but what I'll say is as we build these programs to help monitor and manage district driving, you need somebody dedicated to do that. And so that was kind of the goal of that role in order to do more work related to it. But I also do have good news whenever you want to discuss it, Councilmember, as to our efforts related to vehicle driving.
Yeah, so do you know roughly how many how am I driving complaints are about speeding?
Let me check. See if I can find that information for you. Looking for our 311 numbers and what they are. So
Thank you.
hold on one moment. Apologies. I don't necessarily see that offhand in my data, but what I can do is I can definitely get you that information. We did have an increase in how's my driving complaints, but nonetheless, I don't necessarily think that they were all related to speeding. I think generally the complaints that we get are not speeding. That doesn't
Parking?
Parking, or if somebody drove in a way where they moved into a lane when they shouldn't have, or they see a vehicle somewhere where they don't want it to be, things of that sort. But yes, parking is definitely one of the larger ones, not as much on the speeding front. The speeding front is more captured through our, the ticketing process, I would say.
So how do you make progress without that analyst?
The team is still doing the work. They're just being stretched in terms of these are the same folks who are doing occupational safety inspections. They're looking at every incident that's coming into the District of Columbia. They're working on policies and procedures. They're training agency risk management representatives. They're reviewing emergency response plans for agencies. They are, working on environmental health elements for, complaints about hot and cold. So those same folks are also tracking all of the authorizations to drive in the District of Columbia. So every district driver has to submit an annual authorization to this team. They're checking and reviewing and analyzing that information. So in addition to that, they're helping to talk about tracking and managing fleet and speeding and tickets. But it is a lot of work. And so for a small team doing pretty monumental things, as I said, often in the background and not necessarily being championed as much as they ought to be. So I'm definitely here to do that for them.
We heard testimony today about speed limiters for the district's fleet. Do you know how many claims were paid out in FY24 related to accidents involving the district's fleet?
And Councilmember, before we jump into that,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I can tell you that we had eight how am I driving complaints around speeding this year to date. So not so many out of the hundreds that we might get.
Okay.
Back to the question around speed limiting and governors. We actually we are working on that. We have actually a pilot that's supposed to be happening at the end of the month, both for ORM for one vehicle and many vehicles at CFSA, where we're supposed to be installing these devices. So that is really fantastic. What I will say though is it's a little better than a speed limiter actually. It's an intelligent speed assist pilot. And what that is through GPS and satellite, they're actually tracking where you're driving and limiting it based on that location. So it's a little bit more effective than just saying you can't go over 60 miles per hour, whatever that may be. And I really
limiting it based on the speed limit on each
the
road that
speed
you're
limit
driving
wherever.
on?
Yes, exactly. So that's a really great program. There are also just efforts and things that we've been analyzing and talking about over the years related to helping employee driving behavior. And that comes down to video telematics, both looking in the cab and looking outside of our fleet, which would help us to get clarity around litigation and losses. But it also is a motivator for the employee to know that, hey, were you texting? Were you, doing something? Were you eating? Were you doing something unsafe? And having that data would also help. So at a minimum, we can reduce things by lowering the limits that people are driving at. That's I think, definitely the first and the best thing. And then there's the potential for working out an ability to have the video that's triggered based on hard stops, hard turns, different things that give that information to be able to go and train and educate district drivers to have better driving behaviors.
And is the pilot being done with CFSA because they're more likely to be transporting children?
They're definitely a risky agency, but it's already actually happening with Department for Hire Vehicles. So they're actually one of the first that is already currently running. And this is through the Office of Highway Safety, which now sits under the City Administrator's Office. So
Right.
they are, they're pushing forward on ways to make the district safer. And we are right there working with them on it, along with DPW, and having those conversations about the best way to use technology to make driving safer for our district employees.
Oh, why is DFHV one of the first?
I think that based on the way that their vehicles and CFSA, a lot of their vehicles are GSA vehicles. And I think there was just kind of an effort to talk about those. They're all on the road all day, every day. And I think that was an important one. It's also one where, the Office of Highway Safety said, these are the agencies that we can kind of get into, work with, collaboratively. We volunteered with one of our vehicles as the Office of Risk Management because we want to be proactive in managing risk.
Does the driver get information about the speed while they're going? Like, oh, you're going too fast, slow down? Or it just doesn't let you go?
It just controls the amount of the speed at which you can go.
Okay, thank you. Very exciting.
The world's a great place, an interesting place.
A little bright spot. Okay, you may have heard Director Miller talk about OCTO's proposed Information Technology Risk Management and Compliance Program. What is ORM's role with the assessments related to technological risk at OCTO?
We collaborate with OCTO very regularly. We meet with them to talk about cybersecurity and other concerns, and they share and provide their risk management framework from a technology perspective. So we are, a government operations support agency in collaboration with the Assistant City Administrator and his great team. We collaborate amongst all the agencies. And fortunately, in being a government operations agency with OCTO, we have a fantastic relationship. We work very regularly. We work with them on all manner of their issues and concerns, and wherever we can be supportive, whether it's a legislative effort or a technological effort or a legal legislative effort, we support them.
And
definitely on cyber and risk, we are talking very regularly.
so you have a role in this program then?
They are the experts, to be 100% clear. OCTO is the expert as it relates to emerging trends and technology. Oftentimes though, we get information and we work amongst the insurance industry, and they are seeing the failings and the back end payments that happen when things don't go right on the front end. And so they kind of reverse engineer processes or talk about and advise when they see that there are losses and concerns. And so we use that information, we work with them, we'll analyze things, we'll talk with them. I wouldn't say we're a lead in any way, shape, or form, but we are definitely a partner with OCTO.
Do we get claims in this area about tech breaches or anything like that?
We have had technology challenges related to some of that, but something I'm happy to discuss with you and come to your office anytime and chat about.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Those are all the questions I have for you today.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. This concludes today's budget oversight hearing. If you've not yet submitted written testimony, please do so by submitting it on the council's hearing management system. The record for this hearing will close at 5:30 p.m. on June 26, 2025. The time is now 11:44 a.m. and the hearing is adjourned.